Hey! Well, this is awkward. My channel is called John Does Warhammer, and only 3 out of 6 videos are about Warhammer, and now I'm dropping a however long lore video on Fallout, but I love Fallout almost as much as Warhammer. In fact, I have a Fallout tattoo. Yeah, it needs a touch up. That being said, I thought it'd be fun to go through all the vaults in the Fallout series because I hate myself, and I need to keep my mind busy to keep out those thoughts. My name is John Does Warhammer, and this is the definitive Wastelander's Guide to Vaults. Before we begin, I will be going through all the vaults from canon to non-canon to it could be canon. I'll let you know what is and isn't canon when we get there. Also, I will not be going over the vaults from the new Fallout TV show, so this will be a spoiler-free vid. And if you hate yourself, I came up with a fun drinking game. Basically, take a shot every time I say vault in the video. Let's start off this list with delving into the lore of Vault-Tec itself. Vault-Tec was founded around 2031. Back then, it was known as America's preeminent nuclear defense corporation. Later rebranded to Vault-Tec after they acquired West Virginia University in Morgantown and renamed it to Vault-Tec University. Vault-Tec was an endeavor to create massive nuclear bunkers across the United States to protect a sizable portion of the population in the chance of a nuclear attack. After winning the endorsement of the US government, Vault-Tec began construction of the vaults shortly thereafter. Despite having the United States government backing them up, Vault-Tec had massive funding issues. For example, the original estimated price for Vault 13 was $400 billion. By the end of the construction of the vault, it cost Vault-Tec and subsequently the American government and the taxpayers $645 billion. I forgot to mention there's an ungodly amount of inflation in the US before the Great War. For example, according to the sign in Fallout 4, a gallon of gas was $113 a gallon. A coffee and a donut range you $30. Even simple magazines were around $20 to $40 a pop. That being said, $645 billion for one vault was still insane, and they built about 120 so. Due to the terrible financial problems with funding the construction of the vaults, only 122 vaults were ever constructed. That's it, only 122. Meaning only an estimated 0.1% of the population would be spared from nuclear annihilation. However, not all vaults were going to be used to save people. These vaults were going to be used as experimentations. A majority of vaults were social, medical, and technological experiments that would go into trial immediately after the bombs fell. The true purpose of these experiments are unknown, however the Enclave was very involved. I can't find where this comes from, but a popular theory being thrown around is that the vaults are used as an experiment on a population in order to better equip themselves for space travel on a generational colony ship. Maybe one vault had a disease purposely administered to the vault dwellers, and the Enclave would see how a population in an enclosed environment would react. And that leads us to the beginning of our list. I will go one by one for each vault that made an appearance in one way or another, talk about their location, their experiment, if they even had one, the history and the fate of the vault, the residents, as well as if they are canon or not. So let's begin with the Demonstration Vault. Located in the city of Los Angeles, later called the LA Boneyard, the Demonstration Vault was the first vault constructed by Vault-Tec. It was exactly what the name entails, only a demonstration. It was constructed specifically to win over the US government to sponsor America's preeminent nuclear defense corporation, later known as Vault-Tec, to be the company to construct these nuclear shelters across the country and in the newly annexed Canadian territories. Despite being a demonstration vault, it still worked like a normal one. Civilians even used it once the Great War began in 2077. Once the door opened years later, the survivors went their separate ways, forming their own communities across Los Angeles. It would later go on to be used as a command center for the Master, who was hell-bent on forcefully mutating the entire world into super mutants.
So what shall it be? Do you join the Unity, or do you die here?
Join.
Die!
Join.
Die!
The Master, as well as the vault itself, was later destroyed by the legendary Vault Dweller in 2162. Vault-Tec Among the Stars was another demonstration vault, this time used as a marketing scheme to convince the population to reserve a spot in the vaults in the case of a nuclear war. It was located in the Nuka-Cola World, a theme park right outside the city of Boston in Massachusetts. Despite only being a demonstration vault, the visitors to the attraction were being experimented on for Project Consumer Guidance. Vault-Tec explored the possibility of controlling human behavior using radiation, subliminal messaging, and airborne toxins. The project lead for Vault-Tec among the stars recorded that these experiments were leading to severe headaches, nosebleed, memory loss, and bouts of depression. The simulation vault was built under Vault-Tec University in Morgantown, West Virginia. It was used by the professors at VTU to teach and train potential overseers on how to run a vault, and more importantly, run a vault experiment. Potential overseers were expected to write a thesis and experiment proposal, then carry out these experiments by being locked within the simulation vault. The last trial to be ran was an experiment headed by Drew Collingsworth, who proposed an experiment to replace all food with a bland, disgusting food paste to test a population's willingness to endure on horrible rations. Drew's experiment started on October 15, 2077. He, along with his fellow vault dwellers, were locked in the simulation vault to carry out Drew's thesis for the next 4 weeks. 8 days after the experiment began, the world would be engulfed into a nuclear firestorm, ending civilization. By October 26, Drew figured something was wrong, and after no response from the outside world and the death of a staff member due to a heart attack, Drew and his fellow simulated vault dwellers switched back to normal rations. By October 31st, all rations were gone. On November 2nd, 2077, the vault was in open rebellion and broke into Drew's office, but by this point it was too late. All the students and staff would go on to starve to death. The corporate vault is located in Los, Texas. The vault acted as a private vault for high-ranking Vault-Tec personnel and came equipped with a state-of-the-art research facility. It housed a special version of the forced evolutionary virus. It also focused on curing sterility that comes with mutation from FEV. This vault comes from the infamous Fallout Brotherhood of Steel game, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but long story short, remnants of the Master's mutant army set up shop here to create more super mutants and cure the sterility of FEV mutation. Vault Zero, located in the Cheyenne Mountains of Colorado, was supposed to be the main hub for monitoring all Vault-Tec experiments. Instead, it became a cryogenic facility where the brains of pre-war geniuses were stored and hooked up together into one massive AI called the Calculator. Due to budget cutbacks from the federal government, several important safety features were not installed or reinforced, causing the brains to suffer massive brain damage, dementia, and other cognitive defects. This caused the supercomputer that was feeding off these brains for computing power to go genocidal and release a robot army to cleanse the wasteland of all human life. Thanks to the Chicago chapter of the Brotherhood of Steel, the Calculator was defeated and the vault was destroyed. After the purchase of the Fallout titles by Bethesda, they stated that Fallout Tactics and Fallout Brotherhood of Steel are not canon. However, there have been hints of lore that points to some of Tactics being canon, such as the mention of the Midwest Brotherhood of Steel.
Some of the Brotherhood scribes we captured further east didn't even know the name of their founder, Roger Maxson.
There were less advanced versions of the ship built on the West Coast a long time ago. Historical records about their current status are in dispute, but we're fairly certain that they were destroyed.
So there is a chance this vault does exist, but I suspect we'll see another iteration of Vault Zero in the future. Vault 1 only appeared in the demo for the original Black Isle studio Fallout 3 before being cancelled in 2003. It was built in an unknown western city. During the war, the military stationed within the city escorted civilians into the safety of the vault. It was in a disastrous state. The life support system was dysfunctional, the generators were not supplying enough power, the overseer of the vault had not arrived yet, and the vault's floating iBot was badly damaged. Of course, this was all from a tech demo for Fallout 3, so even if we were to see Vault 1 and the original Fallout 3, if it was ever released, I doubt it would look like this. And that's all we really know about it. Vault 3 is located in the industrial section of Las Vegas, Nevada, and was a control vault. Despite Vault-Tec utilizing the vaults as massive experiments, they still created a handful of control vaults that would tell the residents when it was safe to go outside and start building with the help of the Garden of Eden creation kit. Vault 3 was one such vault. However, the residents of Vault 3 never left, and instead just lived in the vault. But due to a water leak, the residents would be forced to open the doors to the outside world looking for help, and unfortunately, the people on the outside were the Fiends. See, the Fiends were a vicious, murderous, drug-addicted, caravan-raiding, possibly cannibalizing, and general tomfoolery-riddled raider group. They gained the trust of Vault 3, and when they were allowed in, they slaughtered them all. Now Vault 3 acts as a raider fortress for the Fiends headed by Motor Runner. For whatever reason, Vault 3 has a rather large recreation room with a large supply of Nuka-Cola. However, this could have just been brought in from the Fiends. Nothing is known about Vault 7, but it does make an appearance in the Fallout the board game New California expansion. It can be assumed to be a location somewhere in California. Vault 8 may very well be the most successful vault. This control vault housed around 100 inhabitants and were supposed to be sealed and reopened 10 years after the bombs fell. To ensure their success, Vault-Tec was supposed to supply them with 2 Garden of Eden creation kits, but due to a clerical error, they received hundreds of water chips that were meant for Vault 13, and Vault 13 ended up with Vault 8's additional GECK. 14 years after the Great War, Vault 8 received the all-clear signal and reopened the vault to establish Vault City. The Overseer eventually stepped down and a small council was established to lead the new city-state. The original Vault 8 is now used as a storage space as well as a medical facility. Some say that Vault City has the best medical technology in the wasteland. To become a Vault City citizen, one must complete a borderline impossible citizenship test. If you want to become a Vault City citizen, in-game, your character must have 9 perception, 9 intelligence, and 9 luck. Afterwards, a thorough physical examination takes place to spot any sort of mutation, meaning a path to citizenship for any wastelander is almost impossible. That's not all. Vault City employs, servants that they buy from the slavers in the den. Vault City citizens swear up and down that they are not slaves, but they bought them, they do not enjoy the rights of other citizens, and most importantly, they cannot leave.
Why do we condone slavery? The system has been in place for many years, and it works quite well. Both parties benefit from the institution. They are not slaves, they are our servants. We have given them homes, food, clothing, and a purpose. We have given them a life. I believe it is time you left. I suggest you make your stay in Vault City a short one.
Also, Vault City is a planned community, meaning citizens don't get pregnant the normal way, but instead only during what they call pregnancy cycles ordained by the council. An autodoc within Vault 8 examines the DNA of all male and female citizens and then matches the best pairs. So yeah, weird place with really weird rules. And slaves. Located in the Mojave Desert, Vault 11's purpose was to see if the population would sacrifice one of their own if it meant the continued survival of the rest of the vault. After the bombs fell, a voice on the intercom stated that one resident must be sacrificed to the vault computer or the entire vault would be destroyed. On top of that, the vault door was sealed forever. After this realization, the vault dwellers assumed the Overseer knew about this plot the whole time and chose to sacrifice the first Overseer. After that, sacrifices were chosen through a democratic election. Whoever was elected would act as an Overseer, and when the term was up, they would be led to the sacrificial chamber and killed. Eventually, political parties began to arise to nominate a candidate and post propaganda posters all over the walls. These parties included the Justice Bloc, the Divine Will Bloc, Allied Service Workers Bloc, the Human Dignity Bloc, the United Vault Technicians Bloc, and the Utilitarians Bloc. Eventually, over time, the election process was a farce, and the most powerful party, the Justice Bloc, essentially nominated and voted in anyone they wanted to. The leader of the Justice Bloc threatened a Vault resident named Catherine Stone to nominate her husband as Overseer unless she performed sexual favors for him. Despite complying with his demands, the Justice Bloc nominated Catherine's husband anyway. Catherine understandably became furious and began a killing spree, taking out members of the Justice Bloc one by one until she was finally caught. And because of her crimes, she was elected as the next Overseer instead of her husband. Even though being an Overseer was a bad thing, and it meant certain doom for yourself, you were still the Overseer. You were still in charge. So Catherine's first act was to issue Overseer Order 745, which dissolved the election process entirely, and a yearly sacrifice would be chosen randomly by a computer. This one order would destroy the power of the Justice Bloc overnight, and in a desperate attempt to get their power and security back, they planned an armed coup. The following civil war would kill the remaining Vault dwellers -5, who all decided that they would wait out the clock and not sacrifice anyone else. But that's not the end. After the clock ran out and no sacrifice was sent to the chamber, a voice came over the intercom system saying the Vault dwellers made the right choice to not sacrifice their fellow humans and that it was all a test. They wouldn't be killed like the original announcement stated, and in fact, as a reward, the Vault door was unsealed and they could leave at any time. If the Vault residents never sacrificed anyone, they would have been set free at any time. A rather cruel joke from Vault-Tec. Because of this revelation, 4 out of 5 remaining survivors decided they couldn't move on and committed. all but one, who, with a heavy sigh, we hear him slowly walk out the door. The one and only survivor of Vault 11.
Are we really gonna do this? It's open. We could just leave.
I couldn't. Not after that.
We don't deserve to leave. A shining example. That's what it called us. But we were. We did what we were supposed to. Not by a long shot. Anybody would have done what we did.
You ask me? That's exactly the problem. Now let's get on with this.
I'll go first. Wait. People should know what happened. They could learn from it. If there's anyone out there at all, I hope they never have to find out. Ready, Harry? Yeah. No, wait!
Vault 12, located in Bakersville, California, was advertised as one of the best vaults with every amenity a resident could need, including a highly advanced water purification system that could even take the wastewater from Bakersville's sewage system and produce clean water. However, the true purpose of Vault 12 was to test the effects of large amounts of radiation on a population. To ensure the experiment worked, Vault-Tec installed a faulty vault door that would not close when it was time to fill the shelter. High doses of radiation from the bombs seeped in, and all the residents died from radiation poisoning or began the process of ghoulification, and were possibly the first ghouls in existence. Fuck off, Eddie Winters! I refuse to believe you exist! 6 years later, in the summer of 2083, the residents of Vault 12 left the vault and began rebuilding Bakersville into Necropolis, or the City of the Dead. Brutal man named Set would soon take over Necropolis, running the original overseer out of town.
There'd better be a killer reason for standing in my shadow. Does next on the menu ring a bell for ya, Normie?
However, Set did not have full control over Necropolis, as peaceful ghouls retreated to the underground sewers of Necropolis and lived outside the influence of Set. Despite this blatant disregard for his authority, Set still sent water and other supplies to these ghouls, as he was afraid he would not have the manpower to defend the Necropolis if it ever got attacked, which is exactly what happened. In March of 2162, the Master's mutant army attacked and sacked Necropolis, scattering survivors across California and slaughtering any who remained. It's not known if Set was killed during this attack or not, but I suspect he didn't make it out alive. He's not the type of man to completely disappear unless he's dead. Vault 13 is the home of the original protagonist from Fallout 1. Its real-world location isn't stated in the games, but it's probably in Sequoia National Park or Inyo National Forest. Vault 13 has a bit of a problem. Originally, it was a control vault. Then, in the Fallout Bible, the experiment was to test a population after 200 years of isolation from the outside world. Then, in Fallout 2, Enclave President Dick Richardson says the residents of Vault 13 were to be sealed away forever until they were needed by the Enclave in the future. So whatever the exact experiment was, the population was supposed to be sealed for a long time. Vault 13 was equipped to be completely self-sufficient for a very long time, being equipped with heavy construction machines and materials for any needed expansions, hydro farms, a water purification system that took underground water surrounding the vault and cleaned it for drinking water, and finally a vast entertainment library that lasted the 200 or so years they were supposed to be locked up for. Vault 13 was also equipped with the Garden of Eden creation kits, devices that were to help terraform the surrounding area once the vault doors opened, which is odd considering they were supposed to be locked up until the Enclave needed them. Perhaps they were equipped with a Gek to be given to the Enclave once they showed up. Either way, each control vault was given 2 Geks. However, due to a shipment error, a third Gek was supposed to go to Vault 8, was instead shipped to Vault 13. And Vault 13's backup water chips were all sent to Vault 8, leaving Vault 13 with 3 Geks and no extra water chips. This error would lead to the water crisis of 2161. Vault 13's water purification ship began to malfunction before December 5th, 2161, and 3 Vault residents would be sent out to the waste to search for a spare chip. These 3 included Ed, who I guess didn't get very far as his corpse is seen directly outside the vault door, Talius, who discovered Necropolis had a large water supply. However, after a failed attempt to kill the super mutants at the Necropolis watershed, Talius was exposed to FEV and mutated. Eventually, Talius was rescued by the followers of the Apocalypse, where he remains to spy on the children of the Cathedral. Finally, the last resident to be sent out to the waste was the main character of Fallout 1, the Vault Dweller, who eventually found a replacement water chip, and after dealing with the Master's super mutant army, returned to Vault-13 as a hero in May of 2162. However, the Overseer would banish the Vault Dweller to the waste, convinced that the other Vault residents would look up to the Vault Dweller and want to leave the Vault to create a new society outside, ruining the plans of the Enclave. The residents eventually found out about this banishment, and half the residents left the Vault, and headed north alongside the Vault Dweller, and founded the tribal village of Arroyo. Those who remained in the Vault arrested the Overseer, and after a trial, sentenced him to execution for his betrayal. 80 years later, the village of Arroyo experienced a string of bad luck. Famine, disease, and droughts have left the people of Arroyo on their knees. The grandchild of the Vault Dweller, simply known as the Chosen One, was sent by the village elder to find Vault 13, or as it was now known, the Vault of the Holy 13. Unfortunately, the Enclave sieged Vault 13, kidnapping the residents that stayed instead of following the Vault Dweller to Northern California, leaving behind a pack of intelligent talking Deathclaws at Vault 13. Yeah, Fallout 2 can be weird sometimes. The pack of Deathclaws disobeyed orders and organized a community within the now abandoned vault. This community even had humans who decided to live amongst the Deathclaws. The Enclave came back in 2241, wiping out the Deathclaws for good. Thank God, what a weird story arc. After the defeat of the Enclave by the Chosen One, the kidnapped Vault Dwellers and the villagers of Arroyo were reunited with the help of the Gek and became a prospering community in Northern California. Just so you know, we're only on Vault 15 out of like 100 plus, and the script is already 10 pages long, so please leave a like if you enjoyed so far. I can get that little crumb of serotonin I get every time I see that notification on my homepage. Anyways, thanks. Vault 15 is most likely to be the second vault you visit in the original Fallout. Located east of Vault 13 in the first game, Vault 15 seems to have been located in the Death Valley National Park, just on the border with Nevada, but its true location was never confirmed. The experiment for the vault was pretty interesting, but in my opinion was never explored far enough. Essentially, all dwellers selected for the vault had radically different political backgrounds, and the experiment was to study this group to see if different groups of polar opposite political views would live together. Naturally, they couldn't. And after an overpopulation problem in 2097, a schism broke out in the vault, with a majority of residents stripping important technology and leaving for the waste. The four groups that emerged from the vault would go on to create the Khans, a semi-nomadic raider group that relies heavily on chem production to get by, a cannibalistic raider tribe called the Jackals, another raider tribe that worshipped snakes called the Vipers, and finally the last group would go on to found Shady Sands and later the New California Republic. This is what I mean that the social experiment feels underwhelming. The residents were supposed to be of radically different political philosophies, and yet we got 3 raider tribes with a slightly different flavor and a liberal democracy. I would have hoped for 4 groups consisting of, let's say, communists, fascists, free market Democrats, and, oh, I don't know, Ted Kaczynski just for fun. Nonetheless, Vault 15 made an appearance in Fallout 2 as well. This time, a group of squatters has taken up residence in the abandoned vault, and the Chosen One was tasked with clearing them out so the NCR could take over. At first, this seemed like a straightforward problem. A semi-imperialist power wanted to take over territory for their vital resources, or in this case, an abandoned vault with pre-war tech, and the people living there didn't want to leave as this was the only home they knew. However, they were just covering for the Khans, or the new Khans, who came back and made Vault 15 their headquarters for caravan raiding against the NCR. The Chosen One most likely brokered a deal between the squatters and NCR where, in return for annexation, the squatters would be provided citizenship and all the privileges that came with it. And the Khans were once again wiped out by the main protagonist, a tradition as old as time. Almost nothing is known about Vault 17. The only known resident of the vault is the super mutant companion Lily in Fallout New Vegas. She said she lived in the vault into her 70s until the Master and his super mutant army breached the vault and turned all the residents into super mutants. If the Master raided the vault, perhaps it was located in southwestern California or even possibly to the north of the Mariposa military base. There was concept art of an armored Vault 17 jumpsuit, so perhaps the vault was supposed to make an appearance in New Vegas, but that's just my personal theory. Vault 19 is located on the outskirts of Las Vegas, Nevada on Route 159 and had a rather interesting experiment. The experiment set out to study the effects of factionalism. Residents of the vault were divided into 2 sectors, the Blues and the Reds, and that's it. Vault-Tec wanted to instill paranoia into the residents through non-chemical and non-violent ways, and all they had to do was assign residents to either the blue or the reds, going as far as having 2 overseers, a blue overseer, and a red overseer. Eventually, anything bad that happened was the fault of the other. A leaky water pipe, the reds were probably behind it. An outbreak of the common cold? This smells like something the blues would do. The Vault Doctor began writing about residents going through borderline schizophrenic psychosis, hearing odd static noises, and thinking blinking lights in the vaults were actually code of one faction secretly talking to each other. Unfortunately, the fate of the residents is unknown, but a group of escaped convicts, called the Powdered Gangers, took up Vault 19 as a headquarters and said they found the place already abandoned when they got there. Taking a look around, the place seems like no one has lived there for a very long time. Located on the Las Vegas Strip, Vault 21 was a test if a society could organize itself through gambling. All residents were equal, and the layout was perfectly symmetrical. Any conflicts between residents or factions of residents were settled with gambling. The winner would be allowed to settle the dispute however they saw fit. In 2274, Vault 21 was contacted by Robert House, the self-proclaimed sole proprietor of the new Vegas Strip, and with an offer to join him in resurrecting Vegas. Naturally, some residents were in favor while others were against it. To settle the dispute, representatives of the two groups played blackjack, with the side wanting to open the vault eventually winning. The vault door was open and the lower levels of the vault were filled with concrete. At the request of Sarah Weintraub, the upper levels were kept open and turned into a hotel for the new Vegas Strip. The residents of Vault 21 eventually left and made a life outside the vault. Notably, Doc Mitchell, the doctor that saved the player's life at the beginning of the game, came from Vault 21, who settled in Good Springs. Located at the base of Mount Charleston, Nevada, Vault 22 was in use before the war even started. The scientists stationed there studied how to get larger crop yields to combat world hunger through better fertilization, resistance to insects and diseases, as well as droughts. After the war, the residents continued their experiment on crops with the hopes of using their research to help rebuild society. One experiment involved using Beauveria mordicana as pesticide, and this is where the problem begins. This fungus would grow on any insects it came into contact with and would grow inside the bug, killing it within days. However, the fungal colony, now growing inside the dead bug, could control its body, allowing it to move around, infecting new hosts for the spores to grow on. I think you know where this is going. Guess what? That fungus can infect humans too. Side note, this fungus is based off the very real Beauveria bassiana that does the same thing minus the controlling the dead body part. No, that's what Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, also known as the zombie ant fungus, does, and yes, this is very real. Luckily, these fungi don't affect humans. Yet. So yes, Beauveria mordicana was meant to be a pesticide, could infect humans as well, and as soon as they started experimenting on it in the vault, the residents were all walking time bombs. The first signs of infection is the development of pneumonia as the fungus begins its growth in the lungs. Eventually, this develops into a fever, constant cough, chills, and then total organ failure. After the patient's death, the fungus continues to grow, eventually taking full control over the host body, turning them into spore carriers. Naturally, panic ensued, and in a vain attempt to control the infection, the lower levels of the vault were flooded with gas and lit on fire. This only angered the spore carriers, who subsequently tore the scientists to shreds. In 2096, 65 years before the events of Fallout 1, the vault was abandoned and left open for any curious adventurer to wander in. Surprisingly, this is not the end of Vault 22's story. A group of 118 survivors made their way from Mount Charleston to Zion National Park in Utah, where they encountered a group of refugees from Mexico. I don't know what happened to these residents during the 3-day hike to Zion, but the Vault Dwellers descended on the Mexican refugee camp and slaughtered all the men and any woman or child who tried to resist, and then captured the rest. What's even darker is that they killed and ate all the surviving Mexicans. Because of this horrendous crime, a resident of Zion named Randall Clark, whom Oxhorn did an amazing video on, waged a brutal one-man war against the Vault 22 survivors for 10 months, ambushing their patrols and booby-trapping their bodies. After about 80 had died at the hands of Clark, the remaining group ate their dead for nourishment and then left the valley. It is worth noting that Randall could hear them coming from a mile away due to their constant coughing, so these people were doomed anyways. That's the last we hear about the remaining 40 or so Vault 22 residents. What started as a noble cause to find new and better ways to grow crops boiled down to ambushing innocent civilians and eating them for survival. Vault 24 was a cut vault from Fallout New Vegas. It must have been cut early, as all we can find is a Vault 24 jumpsuit if you use the console commands. If we are theory crafting here, Fallout New Vegas had plans to expand eastward and show more Legion territory, so I like to think that it was supposed to be located in Arizona, but it could have just easily been in Nevada. Like I said, we know nothing about it. Vault 27 comes from the Fallout Bible, a compiled online resource created by the original Fallout creators to expand the Fallout universe. All we know about Vault 27 is that it had an experiment to test overpopulation, deliberately assigning 2,000 people to the vault despite being able to only hold half of that. Perhaps the residents found a way to make it work, but vaults seldom have a happy ending. Vault 29's location isn't exactly known besides just being on the west coast somewhere. The experiment was to fill the vault with exclusively only children under the age of 15, with their parents being diverted elsewhere. In the Fallout Bible, it is stated this is where Harold, the half-ghoul, half-FEV mutant, came from. It was referenced in Fallout 76, where Vault-Tec University student was complaining about being assigned to Vault 29 with, quote, a bunch of obnoxious rich teenagers. Nothing else is known about Vault 29. A truly American vault. Vault 34, located south in Las Vegas, Nevada, Vault 34 was provided with a large, unrestricted access to a vast arsenal. And when I mean vast, I mean holy shit, I can't even carry everything out of this vault. The vault also came equipped with large recreation rooms at the cost of personal living space. Just to give you an idea of the amount of heat this vault was packing, I want to go through the list of loot you can find within the armory in the game, and mind you, this is what was left over after the vault had been abandoned for some time. There's the All-American, a unique carbine, 2 sniper rifles, a missile launcher, a minigun, 3 blocks of C4, 2 assault carbines, 2 grenade launchers, 1 marksman carbine, a riot shotgun, a pulse gun, 7 Vault security armor sets, a copious amount of ammo for all these weapons. Again, this is after the vault was picked clean and abandoned. So why wasn't it abandoned? Well, some jackass of an overseer thought having unregulated access to an armory big enough to invade Luxembourg was a bad idea, and locked up the armory. Riots ensued and a group of residents went to leave the vault, with most of the vault security trying to keep the people in. Another group broke into the armory and stole, reclaimed the weapons and probably used them to escape the vault. The descendants of Vault 34 can be found at the Nellis Air Force Base, where they have become the boomers, who use their massive weapon arsenals as well as howitzer cannons to keep outsiders away and become an isolationist, almost xenophobic tribe. However, the current leader of the boomers, Pearl, wants to convince her people the outside world is not something to fear, and if the player helps around the base enough, will support either the NCR or the Legion in the upcoming second battle of Hoover Dam. Vault 36's experiment was to replace all normal rations with thin, watery gruel, which I can imagine meant the population revolted and left, or all starved to death through malnutrition. Too bad we'll probably never know, as Vault 36 was only mentioned once in the Fallout Bible. Vault 39 was going to be featured in the now, thankfully, cancelled Fallout Brotherhood of Steel 2. It was going to be located in Albany, Texas. The original experiment was unknown, but the vault would have been overran by giant mutated plants. The only other thing worth mentioning was the player would have been able to find a Garden of Eden creation kit, which isn't anything too special as most vaults came equipped with 2. Vault 42's entire facility only provided light bulbs that were no stronger than 40 watts. This is what a 40-watt bulb looks like in the dark. It's not too bad, but if the entire vault only had these for lighting, I can see how this would be a problem. I guess the experiment was to see if humans could thrive in a dark environment, and if we're taking the space colonization theory seriously, I suppose saving power and lighting would have helped out. Again, this comes from the Fallout Bible, so besides the light bulbs, we know nothing else about it. Only mentioned once, Vault 43 had a population of 20 men, 10 women, and a panther. That's it. Moving on. Located in a heavily forested area northwest of Grafton, West Virginia, Vault 51 did not have an overseer. Instead, it was controlled by a Zax supercomputer. See, Zax supercomputers in the Fallout universe are the closest they got to real sentient AI. There have only been a handful of Zax supercomputers featured in the Fallout series, and Vault 51 is one of them. The Zax computer was tasked with discovering a better method of choosing a Vault overseer. At first, it tried an election process, but after it was disappointed with the results, it tried to create leaders through crisis. and chose a leader that stood up to the challenges that were presented to the Vault residents. The AI would go on to create more elaborate social experiments, all in the name of finding a true leader. It would do some real weird things, like moving all the elite class members of the Vault into cramped bunk rooms, or changing the rules of a talent show halfway through the competition, trying gambling as a form of choosing an overseer, releasing houseflies to further annoy residents, setting off alarms to disturb residents during their sleep, and eventually just changing the coffee to decaffeinated, I guess just to see what would happen. Zax would also create an artificial food crisis. Eventually, a small group of residents would start to worship the supercomputer as a god, which reminds me of the short story I Have No Mouth and I Must Breathe, where a supercomputer tortures a small group of humans for centuries and tries to convince one of the members that is actually a god and is deserving of worship. At some point, all residents slowly died off, leaving only one resident in the Vault, who also found a way to escape. The Vault is currently overrun by the Scorched, which I suppose Zax tried to select an overseer from. Vault 53, once again, is a vault only mentioned in the Fallout Bible. The social experiment was all the tools in the vault would quickly break every few months, which would keep the residents stressed and overworked at all times. Vault 55, from the small amount of lore we got, seems like an entirely normal vault, but was not provided with any entertainment holotapes. Vault 56 was also a normal vault, except the only entertainment provided was from a comedian that wasn't particularly funny. I didn't know Jeff Dunham was canon in Fallout. Nothing is known about Vault 65 except it was going to make an appearance in Fallout 76 within West Virginia. Within the file of Fallout 76, there were going to be several spawn points for feral ghouls, so I think it would be safe to say the vault suffered from some sort of radiation leak. Also, a Vault 65 chest was discovered within the game files, and that's all we really know. Vault 68's location isn't known, but of the 1,000 residents that lived there, the initial 999 were men and only one woman. You sick fucks couldn't help yourself, huh? Vault 69 is the same as Vault 68, but the genders swapped. 999 women and 1 man. You absolute children. This is a non-canon vault that was supposed to be in the now cancelled Interplays version of Fallout 3. Located somewhere in Utah, the social experiment was to purposely destroy the vault suit dispenser after 6 months, leaving the vault without any clothing after some time. The vault was supposed to play a vital role in the cancelled game, being the origin story for a major Mormon faction that used the vault's Garden of Eden creation kits to found New Jerusalem within the ruins of Salt Lake City. According to design documents from the cancelled Black Isle Studios Fallout 3, New Jerusalem was to be attacked and sacked by a variety of tribes and raider groups. The survivors of New Jerusalem would have migrated north and established New Canaan. As mentioned in Fallout New Vegas, New Canaan is canon, and the courier was supposed to join a caravan company to the New Canaanite city, but was attacked by the tribal nation of the Whitelegs. Through speaking to Joshua Graham, the courier would be informed that New Canaan was destroyed by the Whitelegs.
The Whitelegs didn't just force my people out of New Canaan. They butchered everyone who wasn't fast enough to get away.
Poor Mormons, dude, they can't catch a break. Vault 74 isn't a real vault. It was simply used as a tutorial for Bethesda's modding tools, for modders to play around with the program. Here's the thing though, Vault 74 wasn't cut from Fallout 3, but rather from New Vegas files, and then it was implemented into Fallout 3 for the modding tutorial. Vault 75 is located underneath the Malden Middle School in Boston, Massachusetts. It was presented to the public as a safe place for students to take cover in the events of a nuclear strike. Vault-Tec even offered a subsidized admittance to encourage more parents and their kids to sign up for the Vault. Aw, how sweet of Vault-Tec. Although I think it's hilarious to think of a Vault-Tec worker shutting the door on a kid whose family never signed up going, "Sorry little Jimmy, your mom and dad didn't sign you up. Maybe go hide under your desk." But don't give Vault-Tec any credit, this was not a control vault. No, they wanted to run experiments on these kids. When all the parents, their kids, and the teachers were shuttled to Vault 75, the kids were separated from the parents and the adults were executed by security staff. Brainwashing began soon after, with the researchers installing fear of the above ground, calling it the up top land. The children would be trained physically and mentally and then released to the up top land to save the wasteland. In reality, any child that grew up became a quote-unquote prime candidate and demonstrated immense physical prowess plus high levels of intelligence had their organs harvested once they turned 18. Those who only displayed high intelligence were recruited to the science team to train the next generation. I guess recruiting a candidate and then telling them that their friends had their organs harvested isn't a good idea because there was a rebellion of the test subjects led by a graduate scientist. Although there is no solid evidence of what happened to those who rebelled, but considering the vault door was left open, my guess is that they escaped to the up top land. Named after the infamous game Fallout 76, Vault 76, located just outside of Flatwoods, West Virginia, first made an appearance in Fallout 3. In a terminal entry in the Washington, D.C. Pentagon, Vault 76 is listed as a control vault, which at first seems like it is. The vault was planned to open 20 years after the bombs dropped, but due to irradiation levels was delayed by a few years. 25 years after the Great War, the vault was opened and the residents were released into the wild and wonderful West Virginia. Despite officially being designated a control vault, Vault 76 was weird. The overseer, who has a habit of recording every time she takes a shit, was instructed to ignore standard operating procedures, and Vault 76 was deemed quote-unquote special, as every occupant that was selected for the vault was extremely accomplished in the pre-war life and deemed competitive. Because of this, Vault-Tec suspected the residents would become unrestful and maybe even rebel against the Overseer. She was given special powers to lock dissenters in different sections of the vault for however long she deemed necessary. Mind you, in a normal control vault, these sorts of powers weren't necessary. Even stranger, the Overseer was tasked by Vault-Tec to leave the vault and secure the nuclear missile silos dotted across West Virginia in the name of Vault-Tec, not the US government, not any militias, not the Enclave, but Vault-Tec only. Anyways, Reclamation Day arrived, the Overseer left to find the silos, and the residents were forced out of the vault. After Reclamation Day, the air supply to Vault 76 was going to be shut off, which makes no sense. This was supposed to be a control vault. Vault 8 was a control vault, and used their vault as a temporary storage as they built up Vault City. The residents were kicked out into the waste and spent no time tracking down the Overseer and getting their grubby hands on the nuclear silos for themselves and blowing their friends up just for fun. Of course, Fallout 76 is still getting updated, so maybe we'll get more lore in the future. In my humble opinion, I think Vault 76 is far from a control vault.
Aloha! Ciao! Arrivederci! Au revoir! Auf Wiedersehen! Vaya con Dios! Buen viaje!
Vault 77, located in God knows where, was a vault that was supposed to house one man. He was supplied with all the food, entertainment, and supplies he would ever need, but he was all alone. One day, he found a box of puppets and started playing with them just for entertainment, because what else was there to do? After a while, he went full on schizophrenic, giving all puppets personalities, and even believed the Vault Boy puppet was talking to him. After being framed for the murder of the King puppet by the other puppets, the man and his Vault Boy puppet left the vault for the wasteland. He was last seen brutally killing a group of raiders. His vault suit can be found in Washington, D.C., suggesting his vault was around there, with an audio tape next to it, stating that the other slavers are worried about the suit because they believe he'll come back for it and kill them all.
Like I told you, man, I don't fucking know where it came from, but it freaks the boys out. Some story from a while back about a stranger with no name. Just get rid of the damn thing. Ain't no good gonna come from keeping it around. Besides, if it is his, maybe he'll come back for it. Comprende?
Vault 79 is located north of Dolly Sods, West Virginia. It's being used by the remnants of the Secret Service to store the U.S. gold reserves. Sometime before the war, all the gold from Fort Knox, Kentucky went to West Virginia. Not sure why they didn't build a vault in Kentucky, but okay. The vault was supposed to be kept completely secret, but a few soldiers guarding the gold stole just a few $1 million, went to Las Vegas to gamble it all away. A shootout broke out, and despite the group of soldiers attempting to surrender, the police shot them dead in the streets and were declared Chinese spies. After the war, rumors spread of a vault filled to the brim with gold. After receiving some help from a Vault 76 resident, a group of wastelanders managed to break in, only to find the vault was still operational. Sorta. There's only 5 agents left. A mutiny led by an agent called Shorty broke out, killing several others. But the vault is still secured, storing the gold safely for when it's needed. Vault 81, located in Boston, was an experimental vault designed to find a cure for every illness. To achieve this goal, Vault-Tec constructed a secret section of the vault that would be manned by scientists who would secretly infect Vault 81 with various diseases via hidden delivery systems, and develop cures to be tested on the infected vault. The Overseer knew of this experimentation and of the secret vault. Before human trials could begin, the Overseer disabled all the delivery systems and sealed off any access points to the secret section of Vault 81, leaving the scientists to live and die in the laboratory. Before passing away, one scientist modified a Miss Nanny robot to continue animal experimentations to find a universal cure. This Miss Nanny was the NPC companion Curie, and in 2204 she perfected the cure. But with no escape, she waited for decades for someone to come and receive the cure. Vault 84 is only mentioned in the Fallout board game. The vault is located in what seems to be an arid mountainous terrain. Every year, the vault residents vote to exile a vault dweller deemed too dangerous. The players can enter Vault 84 by invitation from the Overseer, but before they leave, the Overseer is voted to be the next candidate to be exiled for that year. Vault 87 is located in the Capital Wasteland, northwest of the Little Lamplight Caverns. It is the source of FEV and super mutants in the wider DC area. The vault began construction in 2066 and was completed in 2071. Besides the normal amenities of the other vaults, Vault 87 came equipped with 4 stasis chambers, a plasma containment field, and 6 food processing stations. The original experiment is unknown, but in 2076, it was scrapped in favor of becoming an FEV research facility. Several vault residents were used as experimental guinea pigs, but a year after the vault was sealed, FEV-infected human mutants would break free and overwhelm the security forces. By 2277, the vault is in complete disrepair, becoming a super mutant stronghold, where mutants roam the surrounding areas to kidnap humans and infect them with FEV to bolster their population. Vault 88 is an incomplete vault located south of Boston. The original purpose of the vault was a sort of R&D center that would invent equipment that would increase the productivity of vault residents, but some of the experiments just seemed comically cruel, such as an exercise bike that shocks the user or administers buff out. However, you as a player can choose to do the humane experiments, like creating a Phoropter that improves eyesight or a slot machine that gives out more wins to increase happiness. If you choose to be nice, the Overseer will be pissed off you weren't cruel for no reason and leave.
Excuse me, what the actual fuck are you doing in my house? Please get the fuck out right now.
Vault 92 is in the Capital Wasteland, began construction in 2062, and took about 6 years to complete. Vault-Tec invited musicians all over the country to become a Vault 92 resident in order to preserve musical talent. Due to his public messaging, the vault came equipped with a vast stock of musical instruments and recording gear. In reality, the true purpose of the vault was to experiment with white noise and subliminal messaging on the residents. When the vault was sealed in 2077, Overseer Richard Rubin immediately began Vault-Tec's white noise mind suggestion combat experimentation, which was the program used to implant violent behavior in the vault dwellers using ultra-low frequency white noises. At first, the program began by targeting individuals while they were recording music in sound booths. After initial success, the Overseer expanded the scope of the project by emitting white noise throughout the vault, even stopping the distribution of personal listening devices in order to force all residents to listen to the white noise at all time. Unsurprisingly, the constant white noise sent the residents into a violent manic episode, causing them to start killing each other. Vault 94, located in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, was a social experiment to study the adaptability of a peaceful, non-violent society. The residents were carefully picked by Vault-Tec and consisted of a religious, communal, and ecologically friendly residents. The vault was provided with high-value resources, a massive seed bank, and agricultural equipment to help preserve the biodiversity of the area. However, they were not provided any weapons or armor. On top of this, the residents were encouraged to open their vault as soon as possible and invite outsiders in. The vault did not have an overseer, but rather was governed by a council. A secret Vault-Tec informant was planted within the vault to record the vault's activity and was told not to become involved with the Vault Council's decision-making process. A year after the Great War, Vault 94 voted to open the vault and establish an ambassador program, where vault residents would reach out to surrounding communities and offer assistance. Unsurprisingly, this led to the deaths of most of the ambassadors at the hands of raider gangs. One ambassador made it as far as Harper's Ferry, and after offering to help set up a farm with assistance from Vault 94, a small group of survivors were sent to Vault 94 to investigate. These survivors failed to stop at the weapons checkpoint and met with the Vault Council. Paranoid of the Vault's hospitality, the survivors proclaimed that Vault 94 was a farce and an obvious trap, and slaughtered the entire council. The survivors eventually found the Vault's Gek and assumed it was some kind of mind control device and shot the Gek, causing a meltdown in the device and a massive nuclear explosion. Fucking hillbillies, man. Today, the vault is surrounded by a thick fog and covered in mutated plants and animals thanks to the Gek's eternal meltdown. Vault 95 is located in southern Boston just outside the glowing sea. The idea of this vault was to have only residents with an addiction to various chems and make the vault act as a rehabilitation center. The overseer was elected every year in October, and their job was to hold daily meetings to help others through recovery from their addictions. All residents were required to attend these meetings even after the chem dependency subsided. A Vault-Tec plant was placed in Vault 95 to record the results and stated that their experiment was thus far a success. Though some residents still suffered from withdrawals, a strong family-like bond took hold in the community. The Vault-Tec plant, however, had another directive. They were to find a hidden stash of chems and open them for the public. One morning, after the stash was revealed, violence broke out almost immediately and most residents started using chems again. It's not stated exactly what happened after that, but safe to say it didn't end well. Vault 95 is currently occupied by the mercenary group called the Gunners. Located south of Spruce Knob, West Virginia, Vault 96 was constructed in 2074 and was advertised as a research facility that would preserve the local fauna of the region and monitor surface conditions after the war. However, after the vault was sealed, the vault's mainframe forced the scientists to meet certain quotas in genetic research on mutated fauna and discover ways to counter these mutations. These quotas were distributed weekly, made up by the mainframe, and would have lasted 250 weeks, after which all research staff would be executed, with only the overseer allowed to leave. By week 148, the overseer and the residents created an escape plan by uploading a software virus that would shut down the vault's mainframe and open the vault door. Their plan failed, however, and all the residents were executed. Although the virus did get uploaded and the mainframe was shut down, leaving the vault door open to the world. In 2103, a former West Tech researcher, Edgar Blackburn, moved into Vault 96 and used it as a research facility to experiment on a new FEV strain that he hoped would help humanity survive in the wasteland. After kidnapping local raider gangs and wandering travelers to experiment on, Edgar Blackburn would be detained after a Brotherhood of Steel raid on the vault. Vault 100 is a cut vault from Fallout 3. The original experiment or the location is unknown. The only trace of Vault 100 comes from a Pip-Boy icon for an unmade Vault 100 jumpsuit. Located in Springvale, Maryland, right outside Washington, D.C., Vault 101 was constructed in the 2060s. The original overseer for 101 was supposed to be the overseer from Fallout 76, but she refused the position in order to stay in West Virginia as the overseer for Vault 76. The original purpose of the vault was to be sealed indefinitely to study the effects of a physically isolated society.
These vaults were designed to be safe havens for humanity, you see. But more than that, they were designed to test and protect us. And none more so than our Vault 101. We are to be a pure and protected breed of humans, never tainted by the ravages of the war above. No, the vaults have been so much more, but only the overseers have known the truth, and we've passed it down very carefully.
Almost 200 years after the vault was sealed, in 2241, a new overseer assembled a survey team to leave the vault and recon the local area. The survey team studied the surrounding area, plant life, and mutated animals. Two team members, named Lewis and Agnes, stayed in Megaton to act as contacts between Vault 101 and Megaton. In 2258, Alphonse Almodovar, fuck it, if that's not right, I'm not redoing that, became overseer as a staunch isolationist, changing the vault's policy back to its original purpose of being completely sealed off from the outside world. However, the same year, a scientist known as James and his newborn child came to the vault seeking to enter. James offered to become the vault's new doctor in return for residency and was permitted entrance. His child would grow up to become the Lone Wanderer, who defeated the Maryland Enclave with the help of Dr. Lee James in the DC chapter of the Brotherhood of Steel. He defeated the Maryland Enclave and restarted Project Purity, providing clean drinking water to the entire wasteland. Sometime in the year 2277, Vault 101 delved into a civil war with a group of rebels led by the Overseer's daughter, Amada. The rebels wanted to open Vault 101 to the outside world with limited trade with surrounding communities. You as the player can choose to side with the rebels or the Overseer, but either way you get kicked out again.
I'm sorry. You're a hero, and you have to leave.
Vault 106, located in Maryland, started pumping psychedelic drugs through the air filtration system 10 days after the Great War. Although the Overseer insisted the tests were temporary, the Vault dwellers then became disoriented, delirious, and eventually violent. 200 years later, the vault is filled with insane survivors, and the player character even starts hallucinating, meaning the drugs are still in circulation. I have a problem with this vault. The experiment started 200 years ago, and you can still find insane survivors running around, even though the vault looks like it's been abandoned 200 years ago. Are you telling me these insane people managed to live on for that long, creating and raising children? How do they get their food? Are these the original survivors and just somehow immortal? Unless there's something I'm missing, this feels like a huge plot hole. Vault 108 is one of those vaults designed to fail. Located just north of Washington, D.C., Vault 108's experiment was to study the collapse of society after a sudden power vacuum during some sort of crisis. To facilitate this, the first overseer selected for the vault was terminally ill, who was estimated to die about 3 years after the vault was closed. The overseer was tasked to fill important leadership positions after the vault closed, not beforehand like most vaults. On top of the sudden death of their overseer, Vault-Tec designed the power generators to fail after 20 years, which is just shy of half the intended use of the vault. The backup power generators would be too small to power the entire vault and would have to be used sparingly. On top of that, to make extra sure the vault would descend into civil war, the amount of weaponry assigned was tripled the normal amount. And also, just for one last nail in the coffin, there were no entertainment devices. Funny enough, it wasn't a civil war that killed this vault though. No, the scientists in the vault were experimenting with cloning. They kept cloning a vault dweller named Gary over and over again. After each subsequent Gary was cloned, they became more and more hostile to non-clones. Only after 53 Garys did they start to wonder what to do with all these clones, and they decided, just one more clone. Gary 54 showed the same aggression towards non-clones and injured one of the scientists. The last entry states that they are killing some of the clones to make room for more experiments. By the time the Lone Wonder appears, the vault is completely overran by Garys.
Gary!
Vault 109 comes from Fallout, the board game, and its exact location is not known. Looking at the tile piece, we can see the vault is in some sort of crater. Whether this is a natural crater or if a nuclear bomb landed on top of the vault, we don't know. But there are some hints. There are radiation symbols surrounding the vault. Inside the vault is also completely abandoned and filled with radiation, suggesting a nuclear bomb did hit it. Before it was abandoned, Vault 109 and Vault 84 had a great trading relationship between them. Vault 109 is a high-class vault with luxury products from before the Great War. Players can find a Fat Man launcher and a set of T-60 power armor. Vault 111 is the starting vault for the main protagonist in Fallout 4. Located in the suburb of Sanctuary Hills, just outside Boston, this vault was advertised just like any other vault, and even offered free entry for military veterans plus their families.
I'm here today to tell you that because of your family's service to our country, you have been pre-selected for entrance into the local vault. Vault 111.
Go away.
Vault 111, however, was an experimental vault to test the effects of cryogenic stasis on its vault residents. The entire civilian population was frozen on the day the vault closed, and the only people not frozen was the overseer, security team, a maintenance team, and scientists. Vault 111 was supposed to be closed for a minimum of 180 days, after which they would receive an all-clear signal from Vault-Tec to reopen the vault. The Overseer also had the authority to open the vault at their discretion. However, they never received the all-clear, and after facing dwindling supplies and an Overseer who refused to open the vault, the security team started a mutiny. Nothing is known about what happened with the mutiny, but considering we see several skeletons littering the ground and no security equipment, I think it's safe to assume they succeeded and left the vault. 150 years later, the Institute, remnants of professors from the Commonwealth Institute of Technology, entered the vault in search of the player character's child, Sean, whose unirradiated DNA would be used to further the research into synthetic humans. Sean would go on to become the leader of the Institute, and the player character is charged with joining him and seeing the Institute continue to terrorize the Commonwealth or kill their son and destroy the Institute. Vault 112 is located underneath a vehicle repair shop in the Capital Wasteland. It was one of the last vaults to finish construction before the Great War. It's a rather small vault, only holding a total of 85 residents who would be suspended in virtual reality, which I guess is also a sort of stasis pod because all these people are from before the war 200 years earlier. The vault is maintained by a group of robo-brains. The Overseer was none other than the creator of the Garden of Eden creation kit, Dr. Stanislaus Braun. After being placed within the virtual worlds, Brown became a sort of god who would toy with the virtual residents, torturing and killing each one before wiping their memories and resurrecting them just to do it all over again. The player character must enter the virtual world in order to rescue their father, who has turned into a dog by Brown. You can either do Brown's bidding by torturing and killing residents for his entertainment, or you can activate the vault's fail-safe and finally put the residents out of their misery, but keeping Brown alive and alone for all of eternity. Nothing is known about Vault 113 as it was cut early in development of Fallout 4. An unused texture for Vault 113 can be found in the Fallout 4 files, as well as concept art of a man with a Vault 113 jumpsuit. Oh, and it appears in the Bethesda pinball video game, which I just found out is a thing. Vault 114, located in the subway system downtown Boston, was a social experiment where wealthy families would buy a spot in the vault, but when they got there, the vault would be of poor quality, with cramped residential areas, shared bathrooms, with minimal amenities. Also, the vault overseer selected was supposed to be as incompetent as possible, the selectee being a man who believes the government is ran by the Illuminati that uses tax dollars to fund sex parties, and he also admitted to eating Abraxo Cleaner, which is a powdered laundry detergent. However, the vault was never finished in time, and 200 years later is now the hideout of Skinny Malone and his mobster gang. Vault 117 was cut from Fallout 4. It looks like it was supposed to appear just north of Jamaica Plain. There was also concept art for Vault 117 jumpsuit. I don't know how people figured this out, but there is a traveling merchant named Fredo Conell who reveals the location of Vault 81 when you speak to him. But in the developer notes, the scripting references Vault 117, suggesting he was supposed to be heading to Vault 117 instead of 81. Vault 118, located on the island of Bar Harbor, Maine, was supposed to be a vault run by rich, wealthy elites. There would have been two sections of the vault, a large luxurious area where 10 ultra-wealthy residents would live and be catered to by a robotic staff, and there would have been a second wing that was much smaller than the first, cramped with around 300 residents. The rich would have control over the poor wing. Any breach of law would have been judged by the rich. The second wing, however, was never constructed, but the luxurious wing was. And when the bombs fell in 2077, the wealthy individuals were sealed away. These 10 residents also had their brains extracted and put into robo-brains to achieve immortality.
Why don't we grab a bottle of wine and go watch the sunset?
Sounds good, Detective. That was great, Detective, but we probably shouldn't make a habit of this. Catch you later, Tiger.
Oh, all the vaults that had to be cut, this one is certainly the saddest. Vault 120 is a cut vault from Fallout 4. It was supposed to be located underwater off the coast of Boston, Massachusetts. While we can't fully construct the story of Vault 120, we have some clues. By looking through the code, we can see that the player would have made it to Vault 120 through the Yangtze submarine, piloted by Captain Zhao, along with another unknown character simply known as James. It would be revealed that the overseer of the vault is a giant sentient squid, and the final battle would have taken place in the main research lab, with markers for Zhao and James, which suggests they may have offered two different actions to take to end the quest. Another marker near the Yangtze is called Capsule Marker 001, suggesting that you would have escaped by some sort of escape pod. I really wish they added this quest, it sounds so fun and interesting. I would have loved to play it, but oh well. Last vault on the list, and it's pretty lame, I'm not going to lie. Vault 121 is a cut vault from Fallout 4, which appears on the map in the History of Bethesda Game Studios documentary. That is the only reference to Vault 121. Well, that was a lame ending. I would have much rather ended the video on the giant talking squid, but hey, we don't get everything in life. Sorry it took so long to get this video out. Believe it or not, I have an actual job and, you know, classes and stuff, responsibilities, you know, shocker, I know. This will probably be the last non-Warhammer video I make. I want to shift this channel fully into Warhammer content. Unless this video does amazing or something, I probably will not touch on Fallout again. So if you're here for the Fallout, don't be. But if you want to see more Warhammer content in the future,
Clean up this, fix that. It never seemed to end.
subscribe. I plan on doing lore videos, painted tutorials, and some battle reports. So keep an eye out for all that and make that number go up.